To our top story, Sydney's northern beaches is being locked down as health authorities try to contain a growing coronavirus cluster ahead of Christmas. The outbreak connected to Avalon RSL and Avalon Bolo has grown to 38 cases. That's an additional 11 infections traced to that outbreak. There are an additional 2 new cases in Sydney with no known source. Locals are being ordered to abandon all non-essential activity until Wednesday. The Premier isn't ruling out restrictions for Greater Sydney if the outbreak can't be brought under control. Acting Chief Medical Officer Paul Kelly supports the moves made by the New South Wales government.
To put us all in context, as always, there are a lot of cases going on in the whole world right now. We're up over 75 million cases, 1.6 million deaths. Almost every country is affected. And after a good run here in Australia the last few weeks, unfortunately we do have an outbreak. We've all learnt together and we're all in this together over the last few months. We know what needs to be done and the New South Wales health authorities are doing exactly what's needed.
States have responded by escalating travel advice to ensure Christmas in their states isn't compromised. In Queensland, any travellers from the northern beaches must spend 2 weeks in hotel quarantine at their own expense. Victoria is not allowing travellers from the region to cross the border until further notice. Anyone from Greater Sydney must have a test on arrival and self-quarantine. Western Australia requires all travellers from New South Wales to be tested and self-quarantine. The Northern Territory has restricted travel from the northern beaches. Anyone who has been there must spend 2 weeks in hotel quarantine at their own expense. Tasmania has just declared Greater Sydney a hotspot, meaning anyone from the area who travels to the state will be required to spend 2 weeks in hotel quarantine. Well, Sydney's northern beaches is now in lockdown until Wednesday. The Premier hasn't ruled out expanding the ruling to other suburbs if necessary.
The stay-at-home request is now a stay-at-home order. The northern beaches plunge back into the same restrictions New South Wales experienced in March. 250,000 residents allowed to leave home only if they're an essential worker or carer, to buy food and other essential items, and for medical care or exercise.
And we're hoping that will give us sufficient time to get on top of the virus so that we can then ease up for Christmas and the new year.
There's been 23 new COVID cases. 21 are linked to the Avalon cluster, which has grown to 38. 2 new cases on the northern beaches have an unknown source, but experts are confident they'll find a link to the cluster.
Every case seems to have some connection, some more tenuous than others, but some very direct to the Avalon RSL and the Avalon Bolo. Those who attended on the 11th at the Avalon RSL and 13th at the Bolo certainly need to come forward and be tested.
We have had some additional sequences which all confirm the data that it's the same cluster. So it's as expected, but it's always reassuring to get that information that shows your thinking is correct.
The Premier is expecting to see a similar number of positive test results tomorrow. She's flagged there's a chance the lockdown will be expanded to other suburbs or the whole city.
So if you were planning a night out tonight, we ask you to consider changing those plans and staying at home. We want people essentially to stay at home tonight and the next few nights so that we can ensure the virus doesn't spread. We will be considering today, after consulting obviously the relevant people, whether this time tomorrow we do revert back to some restrictions in Greater Sydney.
If nothing changes, the Northern Beaches lockdown will end at 12:01 a.m. on Christmas Eve. Charlotte Mortlock, Sky News Sydney.
Thousands of New South Wales residents have rushed into Queensland fearing Greater Sydney could soon be declared a coronavirus hotspot. The Sunshine State has recorded no new infections, but Christmas plans are in doubt.
A mad dash to leave New South Wales, fearing they'd be locked out of Queensland.
I'm going back to Queensland, actually. Yeah, to see my parents. I've had like a bit of an anxiety hangover from it all, but yeah, it'll be fine. I'll see my mum and dad soon.
Travellers are racing to avoid new restrictions as the Avalon cluster creeps closer.
New South Wales has advised us that there are 11 people in Queensland who are close contacts with positive cases from the northern beaches. These 11 people have been contacted by Queensland Health, have been asked to be tested and have also gone into self-quarantine.
From Sunday, all New South Wales residents will need a border pass to enter the Sunshine State. Those from Sydney and the Central Coast are advised to be tested for coronavirus and quarantine until they get their results.
The reason I'm asking for the Central Coast people is because there is a direct ferry link between the northern tip of the Northern Beaches and the Central Coast, and we know people move between those two areas.
Anyone who's been on the Northern Beaches from December 11 will need an exemption to enter the state. The Queensland government leaving the door open for a full border closure.
For Queenslanders who are considering travelling to New South Wales, we seriously ask you to reconsider your plans.
That's despite Queensland recording no new coronavirus cases. Almost 4,000 people came forward for testing in the 24 hours to Saturday morning. But traces of the virus have been discovered in sewage on the Gold Coast in Cleveland, Townsville and North Cairns. Julia Bradley, Sky News.